Welcome back to another SCP reading, dear researchers. Today we're going to be reading SCP-344, Schrödinger's Can Opener. Now without further ado, item number SCP-344, Object Class, Safe, Special Containment Procedures. SCP-344 is to be stored on a Foundation site in a high-security storage locker. Combination changed weekly. Personnel wishing to use SCP-344 for research purposes should contact the doctor in charge. Due to the hazards presented when a can is opened, it is recommended that a remote control device be used to manipulate the object. Description: SCP-344 is a redacted brand of manual can opener manufactured sometime in the 1900s. When an attempt is made to use SCP-344 to open a tin of canned food, there is a possibility that as soon as the top of the can is fully opened, the food inside will be replaced with live versions of whatever the can originally contained. The amount of live material released is equal to how many separate individuals of the given specimen were required to produce the contents of the can, provided the weight of an individual remains is above redacted milligrams. For example, if a can of tuna has the remains of 50 tuna in it, then 50 live tuna will come out of the can. Compressing items like this into a small space causes significant pressure, resulting in the object being propelled out with some force, potentially causing injury to anyone within the area of effect. Live organisms in a can that is opened by SCP-344 undergo no observable changes. Despite the theoretical probability of the effect's manifestation being approximately 50%, recorded Foundation tests have shown a probability closer to 30 redacted percent for sentient organisms, 10 redacted for non-sentient plant materials, and redacted percent involving redacted. It is also unknown where the live material comes from, as spontaneous regeneration would result in a violation of the law of conservation of mass and energy. It seems most likely that the material is either teleported to the can from existing stocks on Earth, or redacted. Given experiments in a redacted log, redacted seems more likely. After approximately 34 hours, all sentient organisms released from the can will undergo data expunged. All sentient organisms should be terminated before this occurs. This does not apply to non-sentient plant materials. The item was brought to the attention of the Foundation personnel on February 1st in the 1900s, via a news report of a bizarre event in a small town. Sergeant Michael Redacted had arrived home after participating in Redacted. His mother reported that he expressed a desire to eat some canned beef, which he acquired and then produced a can opener from his pocket, saying he had acquired it as spoils of war, and proceeded to use it to open up the can. Upon fully opening it, a, redacted in the hundreds kilogram, heifer crushed him to death. A Foundation agent who had been investigating a separate incident at the time immediately responded. Upon arriving at the scene and conducting interviews, he soon came to the conclusion that the can opener was responsible, and confiscated it, replacing it with a facsimile. The original has been at a Foundation site ever since, with the exception of a single data expunged. The heifer that was released eventually underwent data expunged. The event and its subsequent cleanup was covered up as a redacted missile strike. Addendum: on July redacted in the 1900s, a Foundation doctor attempted to open a can of pork in the site's break room, unwittingly using SCP-344. The can's ability manifested, and the doctor was killed instantly by crushing. While an investigation was launched, it was never determined who placed SCP-344 in the break room. To prevent further practical joking, SCP-344 was moved from low-security lockers to mid-security ones, and its password changed weekly instead of monthly. Test log SCP-344 partial. Test SCP-344-T5. Item: can of redacted tuna meat. Result: 67 tuna and 1 dolphin, despite can being labeled dolphin-free, flew out of the can at a record speed of, redacted in the hundreds, kilometers per hour, severely injuring subject D2856 who opened the can. All of the animals that came out of the can were incinerated, save for 1 tuna that was placed in secure cold storage. This did not prevent data expunged. Test SCP-344-T6. Item: can containing around 200 nanogram sample of pig skin cells. Results: after thousands of attempts, test was abandoned. Test SCP-344-T8. Item: a can of redacted beans. Result: it took tens of tries before a positive result was achieved, suggesting that the can opener's abilities do not manifest as readily with plants. Surprisingly, instead of shooting out 900 pre-cooked beans, as the researchers expected, the can instead shot out 324 separate bean plants, causing minor damage to the containment area and burying the D-class directed to open the can. All but 1 bean plant were burned. The remaining plant did not. Data expunged, as expected. Conjecture: the fact that there were not 914 separate bean plants suggests that SCP-344 attempts to put beans that were on the same plant back together. Test SCP-344-T9. Item: can of hundreds of thousands of cherries. Result: as with SCP-344-T8, it took several more tries than statistically predicted before SCP-344's abilities manifested. Once they did, however, tens of cherry trees exploded out of the can, killing subject D8234 instantly and making recovery of his remains difficult. Due to lessons learned from SCP-344-T8, the test was performed outdoors, preventing damage to the site, although recovery of the escaped plants took some effort. SCP-344 was slightly damaged by the event, having one of its handles bent out of shape, which was later repaired. The cherry trees did not undergo data expunged. Note: given its destructive potential when summoning plant matter, SCP-344 is to be moved to high-security lockers. Dr. Redacted. Test SCP-344-T12. Item: can of human remains. Results: data expunged. Test SCP-344-T15. Item: can of harvested meat from a still live Berkshire boar. Description: the boar was placed under surveillance in a room 3 kilometers from the test chamber. The meat harvested from the boar was ground up and placed in a can, which was then placed in the test chamber. Robotic manipulators were used for this test. Result: after several attempts, the SCP-344's abilities manifested. The boar disappeared from its room in a burst of emissions from across the electromagnetic spectrum, but not in amounts lethal to humans. At the same time in the test chamber, the boar was seen to launch out of the can, slamming into a far wall. The damage done by the harvesting process was observed to have been completely repaired. Class D personnel were sent into the room to contain the boar, which was mostly unharmed despite its collision with the wall. As soon as they entered the room, the boar became extremely aggressive, culminating in it manifesting data redacted. Note: further testing with still living creatures is discouraged unless under heavy containment and neutralization procedures. You know, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't test this on cats. Not saying they should, but given the name of Schrödinger's, you would have thought that there would have been more test logs with us. Well, happy there isn't. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Good luck out there, and I hope to see you all next time. And please stop testing on cats.